So can you just set up like how you even got involved in this whole story?
Sure. I mean, the story has gone on for 28 years, and I'll try to explain it in about 2 minutes. I was a young lawyer just out of law school in the early 90s. I was invited to go to Ecuador to investigate what we were told was a terrible pollution problem caused by Texaco, American oil company, in the Amazon, in an area where 5 indigenous groups lived. Went down there for a week with some scientists, some lawyers, saw really an apocalyptic nightmare. Olympic-sized lakes of oil on the floor of the jungle, hundreds of open-air, unlined toxic waste pits that Texaco had abandoned, and they had pipes coming out of the sides, and they were draining their cancer-causing contents into rivers and streams that the indigenous groups were relying on for their drinking water and their bathing and their fishing. With the upshot being this was, by far, according to experts, the worst oil-related contamination ever. The worst part was it was not an accident. It was not a spill. It was part of a deliberate design by a greedy oil company to save $2 or $3 per barrel of oil produced. Thousands of people have been afflicted with oil-related diseases. Many have died of cancer. The indigenous groups have been decimated. We filed a lawsuit in the United States. Chevron wanted it in Ecuador. They accepted. Chevron had bought Texaco. They accepted jurisdiction in Ecuador. Over an 8-year period, we litigated the case. Chevron vigorously defended itself, had an army of lawyers down there. We ended up winning the case, a judgment that ultimately was affirmed by the Supreme Court of Ecuador in the amount of about $10 billion, which frankly is a very modest amount compared to the magnitude of the damage. And then Chevron turned its guns on me. Rather than pay the judgment, they sued me back here in New York, which is where we had originally filed the lawsuit, where they didn't want the case to be held. And over the last 10 years, they've tried to demonize me, criminalize me. I've never had a jury. And ultimately, I've been locked up in my home now for 2 years and 2 months with an ankle bracelet after I was held in contempt of court for refusing to turn over my computer and cell phone to Chevron. That is, turn over all my privileged information. I've mostly been attacked by 2 U.S. trial judges, Lou Kaplan and Loretta Preska. Both are right-wing, pro-corporate judges. Preska's a leader of the Federalist Society. Chevron funds it. Kaplan took his contempt charge against me, for which I'm locked up, to the U.S. attorney, who turned down the prosecution. Kaplan then appointed a private law firm, did not disclose the fact that this law firm had Chevron as a client, and the law firm, the name of which is Seward and Kissel, prosecuted me directly in the name of the government. I was essentially prosecuted by Chevron and locked up by Chevron. They took control of the machinery of the public prosecutorial apparatus here in New York, and here I am, still fighting it, again with no jury, and trying to get out of this situation. The judge who had locked me up for almost 2 years prior to trial as a supposed risk of flight on a misdemeanor charge. That's the most petty crime in the federal system. And I assert my innocence, by the way, but even if I was guilty, no lawyer gets locked up in jail even for a day on a misdemeanor. And the same judge who had locked me up for almost 2 years prior to trial on this theory that I was some sort of risk of flight also conducted the trial, determined that I was guilty, and then just gave me the maximum sentence of 6 months in prison on top of my 2+ years in house arrest, which I just think is blatantly illegal, and it's already really been determined to be such by the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention. So here I am. It's been tough, but I'm optimistic we'll get through this. We have a great appeal, and that's fundamentally the story.
What's the next step for you?
My sentencing was last Friday. The judge let me out, quote unquote, into house arrest rather than go directly to prison, because she gave me a chance to appeal to the appellate court her decision to deny me bail pending appeal. So right now there's essentially 2 appeals. There's the big appeal of her conviction, which will take 1 to 2 years. And then she denied me the ability to be out pending resolution of the appeal. I fully expect to be exonerated, but the trick that she's trying to employ right now, Judge Preska, is to force me to serve my entire sentence in prison before my appeal can be resolved, which essentially means if I win my appeal, I will have served the entire sentence anyway for a crime I did not commit. So it's very, I think, unethical, inappropriate, abusive on her part. And we're appealing it now to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals here in New York. And I hope to get relief so I don't have to go to prison at all, or at a minimum, don't have to go to prison until the appellate court can review what we think was a completely unfair, unconstitutional trial.